What's up, guys? LJ here, Lawrence James coming at you from Lawrence James Hearthstone. For those of you that do not know, I have averaged 8.7 wins over my last 3 months in Arena. Drafting can be a very, very tricky process, and when I'm giving advice on how to draft your Arena runs, I want to be very careful and very specific in the fact that every draft is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to tell you guys the 4-step process that I use when I'm drafting my Arena runs. Step 1 is rank the quality of the choices available. This is the step that comes easiest to most people, and a lot of people can tell the difference between a bad card and a good card and choose the best card amongst the mix. Sort out which cards you think is the best, the second best, and the worst. If you don't know the quality of the cards, let's say you're more of a beginner player who hasn't had much experience in playing, one very basic way to gain knowledge on this topic is to look up card ranking. Now, I'm in the process of making my own card rankings, which should be out in a couple of days. I'll definitely make sure to share that link with my YouTubers as well. I'll also throw that link into the description of this video, so depending on when you're watching this, you should go look and see if it's in the description right now. Step 2 is Manicure. Many people that struggle in Arena fail to recognize this as a legitimate step, and they just pick their cards based on quality. Your Manicure should be one of the most important factors when deciding which card to pick. Keep in mind that this is highly dependent on where you are in the draft. If you were picking, let's say, your first 10 to 15 cards in the draft, quality should be the most important factor most of the time. I say most of the time and not all the time because let's say your first 3 picks happen to be 5 drops, and then your next choice looks to be another 5 drop. Then you need to seriously consider, if I take this 5 drop, how is this going to affect me? So you definitely consider the mana curve early, but it's just less likely that you're going to consider it in the first 10 to 15 cards. As you get above that 10 to 15 card threshold, you really need to be paying attention to where your mana curve is at. Do you have enough 2 mana drops? Do you have enough mid game, late game? Every draft, you're going to have to pick a few cards that are worse in quality just to make your mana curve efficient. Generally speaking, and I put an emphasis on generally, you want 6 to 7 2 mana drops, 3 to 4 3 mana drops, and 4 to 5 4 mana drops. 2 to 3 5 mana drops. The rest should be filled by late game cards and spells. I go into every single draft thinking the same way, that I'm going to pick a clean mana curve with good quality minions. Does this happen every time? No, and that won't always mean the deck is bad, and I will go into further detail about those times in step 4. Step 3 is synergy. I need to make this next statement very important. When drafting in Arena, you want to avoid picking cards that are reliant on other cards to be good. First, pick cards that are decent by themselves. Let's, for example, say that one of your early choices happened to be a Sunfear Protector or a Bloodfen Raptor, which I know actually can't happen because one's a rare and one's a common. But let's say it happened. Many people would say that let's pick the Sunfear Protector because this effect is good and we can use it in the late game. While that may be true, since it is the early game picks, I would suggest picking the Raptor because individually it is better. The 3/2 minions trade up with the 3 drops, which is quite nice, and that's why you prefer the 3/2 minions over the 2/3. You want to draft your decks as consistently as possible. As you draft more and more cards, this idea of synergy between cards needs to become more relevant. If you miss certain synergy between cards, that could be the difference of you going 5 wins or 12 wins. When people hear the word synergy, they always assume that it's synergy between 2 cards, such as Ancient Watcher and Silence. Not only do I mean that type of synergy as well, but I'm also talking about synergy between cards that may not be played on the same turn, but they do have synergy within the game itself. They could be played on different turns and synergize together, such as a Frost Nova delaying into a Flame Strike. You see, those aren't played on the same turns, but they're played synergetically together and they rely on one another. Not all synergetic cards have to be played with each other or interact with each other necessarily. Synergy, like mana curve, is where values of cards often change. Consider each card effect and see if it synergizes with your prior picks, and will it be consistent enough to justify picking this very reliant on another card pick. Don't be afraid to get very specific when thinking about synergy. You drafted a Cult Master? Well, perhaps you should look at a low-quality minion in a different light. Murloc Tidecaller, for example, summons an extra 1/1. Well, hey, that's another card draw, potentially. The last step is 4, which is strategy. This is probably the most advanced tactic that you're going to use during the steps, and something that you need to think about on the fly. It's not something that you can preemptively prepare for. That said, it's also one of the hardest ones to give advice on because every situation is going to be completely different. Do not go into your draft thinking that you're going to draft a synergetic deck. Like I said earlier, you should go into every single draft thinking that you're going to draft a clean mana curve with good quality minions. But again, the values of each card can change based on the strategy of your prior cards or the strategy of your deck. The easiest example of this that I can think of is when you're drafting a Warlock deck. Have your first few cards been low mana cost, such as some Flame Imps or Voidwalker. Perhaps you can aim your deck towards a Zoo strategy deck. This is where you draft low-cost minions and rely on board control and really get good use out of your hero power and drawing a card in the later stages of the game. Some more examples of this are maybe you've drafted some really strong late-game minions. Perhaps you should put emphasis on cards that delay you into getting into those big minions, like removal spells, sturdy minions, or maybe even taunters. Let's say you have a very strong mid-game, the 4 to 5 mana cost, otherwise known as Yetis. Well, perhaps you should put extra emphasis on your mana curve and make sure that you have strong 2-drops and 3-drops to lead right into your strong mid-range deck. If you liked this video, click the thumbs up. If you think it was helpful and want to see more content like this, subscribe to my channel, follow my Twitch. I just want to take a second to say thank you to all my subscribers. We have recently hit the 1,000 subscribe mark, which I am really excited about. I think that's awesome. We have so much more room to grow, so many more videos to come out, and I'm very excited about it. I just want to say thank you guys. Really appreciate you subscribing and checking out my videos. I really appreciate it, guys. And yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys. Have a good one.